this episode of Conversations for Peace. I'm so glad you have joined me, and today my special guest is Paige Holbert.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here.
Paige, where do you work?
Brookdale Belle Meade.
Don't tell us what you do, because we're going to get into that in
Okay.
just a little bit. But I love to start our Conversations for Peace with introducing my guest a little bit more, and my first impressions of you. Hopefully that's not scary to think about.
No, it's fine.
And honestly, I've been thinking about it, and we first learned about Brookdale Belle Meade before the pandemic, a couple of years before the pandemic. In fact, I met one of your colleagues at the time, Sheila Uselton, and somehow or another we got to talking, and I think one of our members of the church had just moved in there, or was just about to move in there. And so it was kind of like coinciding, meeting her, getting to know about Brookdale Belle Meade, and starting to visit our church member there. And then somehow or another, Sheila said, you need to meet Paige and come upstairs. And so I'm pretty sure you were like touring us around. There was a small group of us came over. Do you remember this?
I don't remember the initial visit.
Okay, you remember all of the visits since.
Every single one.
Every single moment that our lives have intersected, you remember every bit.
Yes.
I know, because we're not working with memory issues at all.
Not one bit.
Neither of us. But we did tour around at the crossings and was so impressed. And my first impressions of you were like, number one, that you were super patient. I mean, this is my impression. That may not be what's going on internally.
My family wouldn't describe me as patient, but I do think I'm patient to the people that I work with.
You're very patient. In your work life, you are very patient. And there's a kindness about you, so that was much appreciated.
Thank you.
Paige is working with a particular population of older adults, which we'll talk about a little bit more. And there's like a generosity of spirit as well, which is really appreciated. And also, like, you like exude positivity, which is really helpful, because I know your days are never the same. It's very hard to get a hold of Paige because she's like running all over and responding to all the needs, which tells me that you obviously are very adaptable, or you would not be so happy.
For sure. Yes.
I know you're a dog lover, which I love as well, and so it's been great to meet your puppy at the crossings, and you do it all with humor, and that's like super fun, right? Like just roll with it, which is needed, because
for sure.
I'm sure it would be easy to be very cranky in your work, and I'm sure there may be people around some days that might be a little cranky. So we all try to keep our smiles going.
Right, for sure.
But yeah, it was so amazing. And I literally remember the time that you said, we need some church up in here.
Here we do.
And we had been bringing flowers, even before the pandemic.
Yes.
Bringing flowers through our Trader Joe's Belle Meade Neighborhood Shares partnership, which you now are one of our regular deliverers, and now even the recipient of our flower fun night, and we're making some flowers.
We love them, that's for sure.
We got to talk about getting those vases back. We'll do that next week.
Okay.
But anyway, and so and like you were showing me and telling me about all of these ways that the flowers are being used, and I was beginning to like understand what you do with your residents at the crossings really is holistic. It really is offering an opportunity not just to be like, in a safe environment where you're with others who are also struggling with some of the same things and living with some of the same things, but also engaging the residents in a way that they continue their creativity. And I don't know if you have the master gardeners still there, but you've had some master gardeners in the past who've been able to,
for sure,
like reawaken these plants that I always kill at home, or that we try to keep alive around here, but they're beautiful and they're all over your windowsills. And that time when you said, we need some church up in here, I remember you telling me that how difficult the pandemic was and scary those initial days.
Yes.
And that everything had to come down and everything had to be put away, and then you all still had to try to work, knowing you have this huge responsibility around trying to keep yourselves safe, but trying to keep your residents safe. You remember any of that? Hopefully that's a blur.
No, I definitely remember that. That was such a hard time to be in senior living. we were one of the last facilities in the Nashville area that had an outbreak, but I was also pregnant at the time. So
wow.
I actually decided to leave work a couple weeks early for my maternity leave because I just had a bad feeling. They told me that if I had COVID, my husband would not be able to be in the delivery room. So I left work, and I mean, not even a week or so later, there was an outbreak in our facility. And this was before the vaccination, so it was so tough.
These were like the early days, like, you know, March, April, May, June. When did you go on leave?
So I had my daughter in November.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, so
but still.
I think the end of October is when I decided to take my leave, in a little bit earlier than that, probably mid-October, honestly. And, you know, that was such a hard time. We lost almost half of our residents. They passed away due to COVID.
Oh, wow.
And at the time, you weren't able to take care of your residents at your facility. You had to send them to a facility that was specifically for people with COVID.
Where they, like, locked all the COVID people away. And then only sent in specialized, like, fully. Because remember, like, we didn't have masks.
Yeah.
And we could talk about this for a while.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, COVID.
And then also what I know is about that time people were really, after that summer, people were very much itching to get back out.
Oh, yes.
There were churches that were starting back up early in the summer, which, you know... And there was like a push to like, let's just all get back to normal because it's been too hard to be locked away. Mm-hmm. And then all of the stories about loved ones who tried to like visit their loved ones through the window, and that had to be so confusing.
Yeah, and you're working with, you know, 100-year-olds that are trying to FaceTime.
Exactly.
That was so difficult. They didn't know that it was a phone call, so they were, you know, thinking they were looking at a picture, and then when we did it through the glass, you know, they also don't understand. Some of them have hearing issues, so we were having to get on the phone on both sides and do it. So it was a very difficult time. I'm so glad that we're past that. Yeah, because that was so difficult. You know, nobody knew what to do. We were all just trying to figure out how best to keep the person healthy. I mean, it was very difficult.
Right. Yeah, and you also did say that during that time, one of the things that was a little bit of a joy on the unit was the Trader Joe's plants that you had been able to like claim. And I know you had been making potpourri at one point. Somebody made potpourri out of those flowers.
Yeah, I had a couple residents that were so amazing with anything gardening related, and I mean, I didn't know anything, but I always tell people I am starting to kind of understand plants better because of the things I've learned from my residents. Yeah. But you know, they'll cut them and propagate them, and they do all kinds of things. And even with the cut flowers, I think that it just brings such a joy to all the residents, and they love to make the arrangements. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they like to just sit around and watch me do it, but they definitely love them.
Well, we had that flower demonstration recently.
Yes,
thanks to one of our new flower delivery people who is just so skilled, and I learned a ton too from that. Just like, oh wow, group things, and what I would always be like, put one thing in the middle. Crazy. Well, we're learning. So tell us where this place is that you actually work and what you actually do.
So it's called Brookdale Belle Meade. There's several Brookdales like all across the country, even in the Nashville area. But we're off Brookmont Terrace. It is next to Wessex Towers. Some people
It's not that far from here.
No, not at all. It takes me about 10 minutes to get here. I am what they call memory care director.
Okay.
So I oversee the programming across our campus. So this means I plan the activities that they do day in and day out. Also plan vendors coming to us. I plan outings, so that's like a big part of the things that we do, which is, you know, we're also coming to you to help volunteer, which has been amazing because taking people that have dementia out to do volunteer opportunities is tough. You know, trying to get the people that work there to understand that we're going to have to repeat ourselves a couple times. You know, and so it's a little difficult. But anyway, I plan the outings, I plan the activities. Our facility has assisted living, and then we have 2 separate memory cares. So not everybody splits their memory cares. Honestly, there's not many in the area at all that do this, which is what brought me to them. So we have early to mid stages in one area, which is primarily where I am, and then we have another building that is for people with late stages of dementia.
Is that called Clare Bridge? Is
that
right? Yeah.
So it's called Clare Bridge. So we separate it into assisted living, crossings, and Clare Bridge. And I have been at this location since 2019, but I've been with the company for 7 years. So I started at another Brookdale before that, just kind of doing all kinds of jobs there.
Whatever you needed to do. So what is your like professional background? You have to have some kind of training for this, right? They'll just throw you in and be like, have fun.
Yeah, so I really moved up within the company. So I actually, I got my undergrad at Trevecca Nazarene.
Okay.
I got it in actually sports management. They didn't have really what I wanted. And I had a scholarship there, so I was like, I just want to, go here, get my undergrad. So I got it in sports management, knowing that I wanted to get into what they call recreational therapy. I wanted to get paid to play for a living. So
that's a great idea.
Yeah, I know. I was actually, my aunt, she raised me. She is a paraplegic, and we would go to these clinics for people in wheelchairs. We would have water ski clinics. We would have snow ski, which I didn't go to snow ski, but they snow ski. They do wheelchair tennis, wheelchair basketball, and we'd volunteer here. And I'd always see these people that were called recreational therapists that would bring people with recent injuries in, and they would teach them how to water ski and do all these things. And I thought, how much fun would that be to be bringing these people that have lost all this independence to this type of atmosphere? So anyway, I thought that's what I was going to do. So I actually started with kids, and I did that while I got my master's through recreational therapy at Indiana University. Never stepped foot on the campus.
Indiana University. Oh, was it all
online?
Cool.
All online.
Wow.
Yeah, so I worked with kids in a camp setting. I thought that's what I wanted to do too. There's this camp that my whole family kind of has been a part of in Missouri. And I worked my way up and was a camp director at a Girl Scout camp. It was so much fun.
So cool.
I loved it. I worked with kids with special needs. I thought that was so much fun too. And then I thought, I'm going to build my resume and I'm going to get into the seniors. This is one, population I hadn't done, but I grew up in a Presbyterian church, so there wasn't a huge youth group where I was. So my aunt always laughed at me and told me that I was great with the seniors because that was all my friends at church. They were all seniors.
That happens.
So anyway, she always used to say I could talk to anybody. So anyway, I went and I got a job being an activity assistant. I did transportation.
Cool.
And then I was what they call a sitter too. So I would do like one-on-one. And I loved it. So I stayed with the company for 2 years, and then the position became available where I am now. And I thought it was just a great opportunity to work in a memory care because I love working with people that have dementia. I also, part of my job right now is educating the families on what dementia is, how to, have a relationship with your loved one, how to communicate with them, why they're doing the things that they're doing. So I started a support group with a friend at work too.
Oh, cool.
It has been really nice. We have people from outside of the community. They don't have to have a loved one at Brookdale that have come in, and this has been really nice. It's very educational. We have speakers come in, or I'll speak, and we just go over different topics. So it's really nice. I talk so much I don't even know what your first question was.
No, you covered it.
Okay,
that's
good.
Awesome.
Love that.
So, before we dive a little bit further into that, tell us a little bit more about yourself personally in terms of what do you love to do? How do you spend your time when you're not?
Okay, so I have an amazing husband.
That's cool.
We live in Mount Juliet.
Well, you don't have to tell all that, but don't tell us your address because you don't need us showing up on the church.
Gotcha.
Church little.
Yeah. I have a 3-year-old daughter.
Oh, we know. We've heard
so
about her.
So she takes up a lot of my time. I love spending time with her. And I have a 5-year-old dog.
Yes.
But a lot of my mother-in-law lives in town. My aunt lives in town, and we all live pretty close, within 45 minutes of each other. So I think we spend a lot of time with our family. We spend a lot of time at our house. And that's kind of what I do in my off time.
You keep really busy. I know your daughter keeps you
she does.
For sure. And you don't live close, so you're also commuting.
Yes.
And so it's a great time to listen to things like the Pause for Peace podcast.
Yes, that is right. Yeah, it does. It took me 2 hours to get to work yesterday, but...
I know, it was a killer the other day. It was over an hour to get here. And it's just because you're coming from kind of further east than me, but you're coming from the other side of the city through all the traffic.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a rough commute from that side. I know.
Terrible.
And yet you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what keeps you doing it?
I love my job. The only thing I would ever change about my job is I wish it was closer, but I love my house. So everyone's like, why don't you move? Well, I love where I live too. Right. So it's tough, but I really love what I do. You know, I don't have a sit behind a desk type of job.
No, you don't.
My husband always laughs at me because I'll be like, well, I went to IHOP today for work.
Yeah.
You know, you take them fun places. I mean, it's not easy. Taking,
not at all.
9 or 10 residents that have dementia on the General Jackson to a restaurant to historic home tours. I mean, It's not easy, but it brings me a lot of joy. And honestly, the relationships that I build with the residents and the families, I mean, it makes it worth it. I love what I do.
That's awesome. So I can attest, I've told Paige before, and she's coached me a little bit through as well. My own father had early stages dementia and Alzheimer's, and I had the ability to be with my parents quite a bit in their final months and final years, and he had slowly been declining even before he was willing to admit it. I don't know if you experienced that in your work, but it is hard. And so even it would take like 4 of us as the disease progressed. It would take like 4 of us to take him out. And so that's just one person. Mm-hmm. And then he still would be cranky sometimes. So love you, Dad, but
Yeah, it's tough.
And it's a grieving process having lost him just like 2 years ago. And also it's one of those, like, it feels like I lost him a lot earlier. So I'm sure you're experiencing that too with your loved ones. Because it's like, when last was my loved one really like?
Yeah.
Even though they still are, you know what I mean? But it's...
No, I get it. And honestly, just the past year, a little over a year, my grandpa was, I wouldn't say diagnosed with dementia. I mean, he lived in Missouri, so he was kind of hiding it. But I always tell people, I think that it takes an event in order for them to have to be placed in a memory care setting. Nobody just thinks, okay, I think this is a good decision. And the resident isn't like, okay, I think I should go move into a senior living.
I can't wait to go live there.
Yeah, that's also a really hard part of the job. I'm getting these people when they're at the lowest point of their lives. Mm-hmm. Maybe they lost their caretaker that was their spouse, and now they can't live by themselves. Maybe they had a bad fall. I've had people that they have found wandering in the middle of the night, and then they realize, oh my gosh, we had no idea it was this bad. Right. So they come to me. So, I get them when they are the most mad, the most sad, and I'm trying to figure out the things they like, they dislike, how they were before dementia. But something that comes up a lot in our support group is, you're grieving the loss of your loved one as soon as the diagnosis happens. Because a lot of times who they become after the diagnosis isn't the person that they were before.
Right.
I hear all the time, well, my loved one would have never done that. My loved one would have never said something like that.
Right.
And it's heartbreaking. It is, but it's a tough job, but it brings me so much joy. My days are never the same. I never know what they're going to say.
Yes, exactly.
And I think that's why I bring humor to it, though.
You have to.
It's the only way, so you don't just cry. I mean, there's some days, I'll be like, man, that really hurt my feelings. Because picture being pregnant in a memory care. Yeah. I got so many comments on my weight. I was like, guys, I'm pregnant.
Right. Leave me alone.
Yes, they're a blast. They don't know my name. Mm-hmm. There's a couple that do. Yeah. They know where my office is, but every day I walk in, I have at least one resident that asks me how my daughter's doing.
Yes.
Because they remember her, so I think just the relationships that we build are amazing.
That's really amazing. So they are like meeting new people and still remembering, some of them still remembering. Kids. And I experienced that recently too, because now like we come to you once a month and then you come to us, which we'll talk a little bit more about that. But it happened a couple months ago. It was like within maybe the week or something like that, less than a week, I came over there and like 3 residents were like, I know you. I mean, I was like, this is so cool. Like, that's amazing. And, or said, oh, I remember that we were just at your place, isn't that amazing?
Yeah,
so
it really is.
It's very cool. But I would also imagine part of the job that's difficult is, we'll call it attrition, but we know people do leave you,
yes.
right? And so...
I mean, it's very hard. I was just thinking the other day, I can't even count the amount of funerals I've been to. You develop these relationships with people, but dementia is separated into 7 stages.
Oh, let's hear about it. Come on, let's get into it. Tell us about it.
It's separated into 7 stages. There's not a cure. There's all kinds of things that are being tested, but it's just going to get worse. Mm-hmm. So as you go through the stages, something I think is the most depressing is they lose the ability to smile. That's something that goes in late stages of dementia. They also start to shuffle. That can be, dementia can affect everything. It affects your vision. It affects the sense of
I remember my dad getting that poke test.
Yes. Yeah. It also, sounds. They become very sensitive to sounds. I have a resident right now, and I got to take earplugs when we go places because sometimes it's way too loud. And if, it was me and you, we would be like, it's not that loud.
I'm glad to know that because that resident went and got earplugs when I was there doing my little sermon, and then we were singing, and then she did come back, but I was like, oh.
No offense, but we are just very sensitive.
I just didn't know that. Yeah, that's
so
amazing. Yeah.
It affects so many things that people don't understand, and anyway, the 7 stages, it just is going to get worse. That's the worst part about it, and so there's a lot of people that want to slow down the progression. They do have medication that will try to help you pause it. But then, at some point at a certain stage, you think, why would I want to slow this down? Mm-hmm. Once you start forgetting a lot of your basic needs that you should be able to remember, you don't want to slow it down anymore. So that's the tough part. And also, they always say with the 7 stages, you never know how long you're going to be in one stage. Yeah. So, you can have a resident that is up and talking and doing all of these amazing things, and then I come back the next morning and she's not able to do anything. She can barely walk. So, we're running all these tests and everything's coming back negative. They go to the hospital, everything's negative. Turns out overnight, we probably just skipped a bunch of stages and now we're in late stages of dementia and we're talking hospice. So that's the hard part. And I hate losing people, and I think that's the hardest part about my job too, is at the end of the day when I go home it doesn't stop. The office doesn't close. I have residents that pass away in the middle of the night. I have residents that go to the hospital in the middle of the night. My staff is still there, so a lot of things can happen, but dementia's terrible.
It is. It's a hard disease, and I found in my experience, and my dad's not the only person I've known over the years with dementia and Alzheimer's, but the most intimate, a parent, obviously. But I've seen folks, really struggle at the start, like you were saying, like hiding it, being very angry. My dad was very angry about this, and I've talked with friends early on who've had parents and loved ones in my ministry, like learning about it, and that there's a point sometimes when the resident or the person living with dementia or Alzheimer's, they don't really realize anymore that they are, but it's the loved ones still, and the friends and your caregivers who are still seeing this impact, and so it's almost like I've seen some people kind of come to peace, if you will, because they no longer remember that they can't remember. For sure. And then the loved ones still like surrounding, and like you're saying, there's so many ways it's debilitating that it's not like some other natural causes of dying that that you really can be alive for a very long time without some functionalities, and that can be incredibly difficult on caregivers, and having 24/7 care is also incredibly hard to find, very expensive, all of that. So
it's tough, and also there's so many different types of dementia.
Yes.
Even if you have so there's some that's genetic, and there's even tests now you can see if you have the gene, but even if you have the gene, it might not mutate, so you gotta decide, would you want to take that test. But then there's also a type of dementia that happens due to stroke, vascular dementia. So sometimes you can't necessarily prevent it, but there's also residents that move in that have substance abuse dementia. And some of those residents can live 10 to 15 years.
Oh wow.
Which is kind of sad. You don't they don't know how long they've been at our facility. If you were able to have a conversation with them, you wouldn't have any idea unless you had a conversation for about 10 minutes. Then you're starting to realize, okay, we just talked about this. So
right.
it's very sad, the whole disease is, that's for sure.
Yeah. Whew, that's a lot. So what do you do to like keep yourself as fresh as possible or as joyful as possible in the midst of all that?
Well,
and at home.
And at home, yeah. So my outings bring me so much joy. So what I try to do right now in our memory care is I have a scenic drive once a week, which the residents love this. They just go, they sit on the bus, we look at pretty views. And then I do one other outing a week. This is to get them out and do things. It is very, very stressful for me and my amazing assistant.
Angela.
Angela, she's amazing.
Yes.
I
someday you two will be doing your own podcast here. We just know it. But anyway.
Thank God for her every day. But I think it brings us a lot of joy. We just, on Wednesday, we went to a pet adoption center.
Oh, cool.
We just go there and we pet dogs and cats. And, some of our residents, they might not be able to speak full sentences. They don't make sense all the time. But that they're excited. And, I had a lady that was just walking around holding a dog. And just smiling ear to ear. So I think situations like that, where I'm able to make someone's day just by doing something like that. It could even be bringing them a Coca-Cola because they haven't had one in a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think that's really what keeps me going, but also vacations.
Yay, vacations!
You
have to take your time away.
I do.
Definitely.
And, healthcare is so hard to work in. The burnout is very high. Ever since COVID, too, everybody wants a work from home job. So, and I always tell people, use your PTO days. I mean, it is tough to get away, but I have a vacation planned the 1st of September, the first week. So, yeah. But I try to get away every
somewhere
so
fun,
often.
I hope.
The beach.
Yeah,
the beach.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Well, that'll be good. And you're taking your family, right? Or you go by yourself?
No.
So you're like, being with your family is also restorative. It sounds like you're not like drained.
No.
Yeah.
I play a lot with my kid when I get home, but honestly, it brings me a lot of joy. So we're going to take her to the beach, and she just keeps asking if there's going to be sand. So she's excited to play in the sand.
And I think you told us the last time you went to the beach how much she loved it. So
yes.
You'll be bringing the sand back. It's okay.
Sure. Yeah.
It's all right.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I love the beach too. So
yeah.
yeah. So doing those things to like keep yourself like, and I would assume the vacation also helps with like, almost like compartmentalizing it. Hopefully you can turn it off when you.
I still ask for updates.
You do?
Yeah. Angela does the same thing. Angela has 2 days a week off, and she texts me every time that she's off work. But it's because dementia's so crazy. We don't know what's going to happen overnight. So just a quick text, is everybody okay? Then, I want to know if someone's being sent to the hospital, even if I'm on vacation. And, it's not like I don't answer my phone or anything, because even sometimes some of the families will call me just to talk about it. But they're all
they don't know that you're on vacation necessarily.
They're all very respectful of my time, too.
Yeah.
A lot of them understand that I'm out, but there's sometimes, we have to talk things out,
Right.
Because that's the next thing. Taking somebody to the hospital that has dementia, that's a nightmare.
It's awful.
It's a nightmare. Hospitals aren't set for people with dementia. You have loud noises and a lot of lights and new faces, and it becomes very tough. I know when my own grandfather goes to the hospital, my aunt and I have to do 12-hour shifts. We almost take a week off of work just staying there with him because he's so confused on what he's doing.
Right.
Which is how a lot of the residents are. So that's very tough.
Right.
But I think that still vacations are very nice.
Well, and I mean, not to just skip over your vacation, but I found it, and maybe I'm being a little too personal in this interview, but I found it very almost like whiplash with my dad, because there would be moments where he would be lucid, you would know, and then the next moment, and you never knew when that was coming, and then if you weren't always around him, you would start to be like, oh wait, did that really happen? Or like, is it like, just like, did you eat or not, or like, how did things go today or whatever, and or did you take a shower? That was a big one.
Mm-hmm.
You'd be like, yeah, we did. It's like, well, there's no wet towel. There's no, evidence of water in the shower. And so, yeah, I mean, it just was like, am I crazy? Or
right.
like,
no.
what's really going on? And and then even hospital visits. I'm assuming this happens with you too, or maybe even in your care. The doctor would ask in that moment, are you in pain, Mr. Nyhuis? And you'd be like, no, I'm not in any pain. It's like, we've just spent the last 3 weeks with you complaining about your pain, and we couldn't even get you in the car because you were in so much pain. But in that moment, he wasn't in pain. He doesn't remember, you know, like, it was maddening.
It is so tough because one thing with Brookdale we do is we take people to appointments. So that's part of my gig is taking these people with dementia to doctor's appointments.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think I could write a book just on the doctor's appointments.
I'm sure you could.
Because the things that they say, and then of course, a lot of people, once they're in a memory care, they're not able to say, hey, yes, I have dementia. I was diagnosed and da-da-da-da.
Uh-huh.
So, the doctor will come in there and they'll say, so you have dementia. And it's like they learned for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, man, so I write on sticky notes and hold it behind them. They have dementia, don't tell them. Just trying
I wish
to
I would have known that too.
Yeah, and this is something that comes up in support groups a lot because it's such a nightmare. But one thing that we try to tell people is there are so many people that do home health visits.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have a primary care physician that comes to the facility. You can have physical therapy, occupational therapy that come to the facility, and it takes away a lot of the uncertainty. And also, you can get blood work drawn at our facility. You can get just different testing that can still happen where you're not always having to go out to a doctor's appointment.
You're not having to take your loved one to the appointments.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
Is so hard.
Yes.
And if you are a working person and you have to arrange transport, all that,
Oh, yeah. And,
take
a lot
time off.
of places have parking garages, too. So you drive up your car. What are you going to do? Drop them off in the lobby?
Right.
I mean, depending on how short their memory is, most of them aren't going to sit in the lobby.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We had a vacation once where it was, all the family, extended family for a family celebration, mom and dad. It was like the last big vacation they came on. And Dad didn't want to go to the zoo with everybody that day, so we were just going to leave him. And I'm like, I'm not going.
Right.
I'm not leaving him. Because he was not, and he was at that stage yet where he kind of didn't really embrace that he had this. He wasn't on any kind of meds to help or anything like that. And it was like, are you kidding me?
Right.
We can't leave him here.
Yes. Oh, that's tough. That's really tough.
But we also couldn't then go and, have the fun vacation. So it just that little thing became a big deal, And he was adamant he didn't want to go because, your people still have agency, right? You're not dealing with folks who are necessarily in the end stages. I mean, you do as they transition, but at the crossings, there's still people who are functioning.
Yeah. So that's what was so inviting to me to work in the environment because I'm able to do a lot of the activities that you might be able to do in like an assisted living. They really are just people that need a secure environment. Sometimes restaurants are hard because we're given a lot of options, but if I look at them and say, do you want a cheeseburger or do you want some chicken? They're able to tell me. So a lot of my residents are able to hold conversation. And that's what makes it so much fun, too.
Right.
They're able to tell me, hey, I had a really good time today. So that's really nice. Whereas in late stages, you're not always going to get the gratitude.
Right.
That might be an occasional smile in your direction.
Yeah.
Which is tough.
Yeah. And I've been over to Clarebridge. We had a church member there as well. And it's a hard place to even enter. So
late stages of dementia is really tough, but I will say, we have a lot of amazing staff members over there that make it such a fun place. The residents, they might not be able to hold conversations or anything, but, some of the last things to go with dementia are anything biblical. Like they can recite Bible verses, they can recite hymns, but music. You stick on music and they can say every single word to songs. But if you ask them how their day's going, they might not be able to communicate.
Are you in pain?
That.
No, you can just sing all of the words to Amazing Grace.
Exactly,
whatever, right?
exactly. So it's kind of crazy the way it works.
Which does get into the brain science, which we're not fully going to talk about because we're not brain experts.
No,
but,
not a brain expert.
We're trying to keep track of our own brain and care for our own brain. And I would love to hear any tips or tricks you have, or brain health kind of things you might share. And I know it's a little bit of a mystery, and also we are like very new, if you will, in terms of knowing anything about neuroscience, right? This is a very what can you tell our listeners?
So
what we all need to be doing?
One thing that a lot of studies talk about are just different types of brain games. A lot of people will see after they retire is when they really start to see the signs of dementia. But think about what you might do when you retire. A lot of nothing. You're so excited to be retired and not having to do your 9-to-5 job. So, one thing they talk about is staying active. Is that getting a part-time job? Is that volunteering somewhere? But any type of brain game. So I always try to do brain games on my phone, or like Sudoku puzzles, different things like that. Yeah. But it goes back to diet too, which is super hard. I
try to remember that now and again. It's like, ooh.
A lot of studies talk about, like seafood, different types of fish are good for your brain. But
walnuts, right?
Yeah.
Blueberries.
Yes.
Is it vitamin E and antioxidants? Yeah.
So anyway, just different things like that, making sure that your brain is still moving and working. But I always, say too, make sure you're doing your checkups at your doctor. You can do brain scans. That's how they find dementia also. Some people don't want to know. I don't know, honestly, if it would be best to know early on or if it would be best when you start knowing signs. That's a hard part that I think people have to make a personal decision on. Because once you get that diagnosis, that's devastating.
Yeah, it is devastating. It's very hard. And in my experience, just watching somebody receive that diagnosis, it's, especially if you're a male, it's like humiliating, emasculating, just so, it's just devastating.
I've had people that have moved in too, and their families will talk about, she went to the doctor, turns out she had a diagnosis this year, 5 years ago, we had no idea, they didn't tell us. And, they try to keep it a secret.
Right.
They don't want to tell anybody because it's so sad, or maybe they are embarrassed. Dementia is something that I think a lot of people don't understand. So, there are psych behaviors that come with dementia, and it's not who that person is. They, in their prime, they would have never hit somebody or cussed somebody out or something like that. But that's what can happen with dementia. There's something called retrogenesis. It's online, and it basically takes the stages of dementia and it compares it to adolescence. So, which, nobody with dementia is a child, but a lot of the behaviors are similar. So if you're in late stages of dementia and you're not able to verbalize what you're trying to say and you're frustrated, just like a child, what would you do? You're going to hit.
Throw a tantrum.
You're going to throw a tantrum.
Hopefully
you might
not bite.
You might.
Yeah, exactly.
But, just different behaviors
kick.
like
I've
this.
experienced that.
Yeah.
Kicking. Yep.
So, different things like that. And it just, as you go through it, the incontinence. That's something a lot of people don't want to talk about, but that happens. And that's very common with the progression. And I think each time you hit a different stage and there's a new type of symptom that might occur, the families are almost embarrassed as to what's happening.
Right.
And it's not anything to be embarrassed of. It's part of the progression. It's sad, but a lot of times you can get through it. But, there are people with dementia that have to go to a psych hospital. And that's super tough, depending on the psych hospital, too. Not all psych hospitals separate, these are people with dementia.
Right.
So that's where it kind of becomes tough. And a lot of times if you need a psych stay, they might not have a bed available. So it's not like you get to go pick where you want to go. You go to the ER and then you're admitted to wherever's available.
Right. Wow.
So that's also a tough part of it.
Yeah. Well, have you seen, there was a way in my parents' dying process where I was like, it is a part of the journey of life. We're all going to die in various ways, right? And so it just made me think, God, what is really the purpose of this part of life? Have you seen there are, moments of joy or moments of meaning out of that at all? Or
I think as sad as my job is and as sad as the just the diagnosis and everything it is a lot of joy. You know, we do a lot of things at our facility that I think are a lot of fun. And, you know, just like what you were saying earlier, we see a lot of humor in the things. You know, I will dig through someone's purse and I will find 4 glasses and 16
and my
forks.
Bible
Yeah, you know, like,
and a hymnal.
You gotta find joy. And, you know, that's what I try to tell the families, because they're like, you know, they'll come into my office and they have like a bundle of all these goodies that their loved one has, you know, stolen from other people.
Right.
But I'm like, it's part of the process.
Right. Well, they don't necessarily know that it's not theirs, right?
Right, they don't.
Possibly.
They have no idea.
So, yeah.
But, you know, I think a lot of the joy comes from watching them do things that they might not have done in their prime, you know? So, like, we have ballroom dancing come once a month, and this is like the sweetest thing I've ever seen. The instructor is amazing, and she comes in and she teaches them different steps, and then she gets them up and they're dancing. Some of them, they did this before dementia, and they went to a lot of dances. Some of them, they're like, I'm terrified to do this.
Right.
I've never danced before. So, you know, little moments like that is what makes it so much fun.
Yeah.
And, you know, even when we have an entertainer, I mean, you should see, you know, I'm sure you guys see when you guys play any sort of song, like the way that they're able to.
Oh my gosh, it's so moving, because we do a hymn sing with them once a month, and I bring communion. We have you know, they're really not there for my little sermonette and the communion. They're there for the hymn sing. They love the bread, because Paige gets the Hawaiian bread and cuts it super big, and they're like, "Can I have another piece?" But so and it also, like, from my perspective as like a pastor, it's like, how do I speak of the Lord's Supper, which for us is like, there's so much about remembrance a part of that, and how do I like speak about the Lord's Supper without using the word remember? Because they may or may not, but also some of them really do, and they know what to do. They know to put their hands out, you know, so they still know this is obviously still an important part, and then they sing. And I'm telling you, no offense to the Hillwood crowd singing in worship, but they're some of the best singers that I've heard in years, actually. They just really sing with gusto.
I mean, we have people right now that were in barbershop quartets. True.
When we hit the right song.
But some were in choirs, and you know, a lot of our residents. I think another fun part of the job is realizing what they did as a job or what some of their hobbies were, and seeing if they still enjoy those. So you know, we have a lot of people that sang in their church choir. You know, and do they still like to sing? Yeah, they do. So just seeing all their different talents and their hobbies and the things that they like, and figuring out the things that they like, I think is what brings so much joy to the job too.
Yeah. Well, and as I think about it too, like, you know, there are theologians who say that death is about the final release of the ego, which this may not make a lot of sense to you, Paige, but that, you know, that the whole process, of course, we have to develop a strong sense of self, a strong, what we would call ego psychologically. But then it's also like a path of like releasing that and letting it go, and not becoming fixated on like our roles or our ego or like who we actually are. And that John Philip Newell talks about how death is the final release of all of that, that we, you know, all that we were in our whole life long is now, it has to be released to move on to, you know, to eternity, and to be the soul that reunites, you know, with pure love itself. And so I almost think about, is that process already beginning? Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
As dementia and Alzheimer's is happening, is that, you know, and the mystery of why this is even something that's taking place, might there be lessons to learn about this, quote, disease, which none of us would wish on anybody, but yet, again, what is the gift of this as well? And maybe being able to be released from some of that, you know, some of the, like, my dad became so joyful. He just giggled all the time. He also became very aggressive at times too, especially under stress. That was what was really difficult. But he was so happy in his final year, and it was just like, wow, I've never heard him giggle so much.
Yeah, and I mean, some people, I have some people that are like, their loved ones are like, wow, this is the happiest individual I've ever seen. I've never seen this before, but I've also seen it go the other way. You know, sometimes, but it could depend on the day. It could depend on the week.
Yes.
They, when they're in the early stages, they could be so happy, and when they're in the late stages, they could be really grumpy. But
or very fearful. Or,
what I always tell people is you
anxious.
never know what's going through their mind.
Right.
The early stages are hard too, because kind of what you were saying earlier, a lot of them realize that they can't remember.
It's like frustration.
They know that something's wrong, and they don't understand why they can't think, because a lot of these individuals are very intelligent. I've had doctors that have been residents. I've had a lot of people that have been very influential in the community, and they can't figure out why they can't come up with a sentence.
Right.
Or
remember their loved one's name, or
Right. And what is also so frustrating, I hear this from a lot of my residents, with this being a genetic disease, a lot of these residents have prepared for this, but they do not want this.
Right.
So, they have the long-term care policies. Get the long-term care policies.
Get the long-term care policy, yes.
They have done these things, and they have said, when I get this diagnosis, I want you to make sure that I'm in a place, because I don't want everybody around the clock to try to care for me. Mm-hmm. And now that has to be done, they're livid. Yeah. They are so mad. There's a lot of times when we first move somebody in, we have to tell the family, you probably shouldn't come back for a couple weeks. Mm-hmm. Which is tough,
Right.
Because they're dropping them off in the care of these people they don't even know.
Right.
But at the same time, I need them to trust me. And if you're going to be continuously here, all they're going to be doing is chewing you out.
Yeah.
Because they don't understand.
Or upset when you try to leave or something like that.
Yeah.
And then
that's
I've talked with folks who feel like incredibly guilty because that you can't stay there all the time, right?
No,
you cannot take care of somebody 24/7.
And my grandpa,
yourself.
It goes in our whole family too. And my grandpa always said, if I get to that point, stick me somewhere and bring me ducks. And that was like his common thing. And we had to do it, and it wasn't that easy. Mm-hmm. I work in this environment, and still I'd go home and cry every night, because I was like, this is so terrible. Mm-hmm. He has not nice things to say, but I always tell people, if you're at that point when they drop off their loved ones, I say, go home and write a pro-con list. Mm-hmm. What are the pros of them being in a facility, and what are the cons? What if they were still at home? What would they be doing? Would they be losing weight because they're not eating 3 meals a day? Mm-hmm. Would they be out wandering at night? Just the things that could happen are very few. But in, I don't know if you've heard of Alzheimer's of Tennessee. This is a great...
Is it connected with the Alzheimer's Association? No.
So no, Tennessee, the money stays in Tennessee.
Okay.
And so they have a lot of great resources for people. So on their website, they have different videos and different things, but they also have like a silver alert kit.
Oh, yeah. Okay, good.
That is very nice, so that if you're taking care of your loved one while you're at home, you're able to fill out all this paperwork, so that if your loved one does go missing, you don't have to go and fill out all this paperwork in your time of panic. You have the packet ready. You can take it somewhere and give it to somebody.
Oh, that's smart.
So this is something we talk about in our support group, because you never know what's going to happen.
Right. I've had church members that have wandered.
Yes.
Yeah.
Silver alert. I always recommend it.
One scary story about somebody, that was not here in this church, but in another area, and ended up downtown and far from home. And so
I had one end up in Florida.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Wow. Well, that's a good place to go. Like, go to the beach. Everybody
she got a plane.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Wow. What a fun job you have.
Yeah.
We have the fun time of you starting to come here at some point in time this year. I don't even remember how that transpired, but once a month you're on your way over here, which is fun. And a Wednesday morning's coming up. Well, this recording will come up later in the next month, but it's coming up this week in a couple days from when we're recording. And so we also have preschoolers that have been doing the same stuff that you all do. And I remember when you first came, you're like, we might have to repeat ourselves now and again. And what if they don't get the right stuff in the base? Like, it does not matter.
Oh, yeah.
We have been working all year with preschoolers filling food bags in our food pantry. And if preschoolers can do it, your residents can do it as well. And at the end of the day, so what? So what if there's not a peanut butter in there or whatever? Right. So, but it is so amazing And I want to brag on this situation a little bit because it feels a little bit unique. Like, they are a sort of vulnerable population, if you will, and yet they're still welcomed, and there still are things they can do. Like, they still can do that. Now, maybe we did not have them pack the Scooby snacks a couple of times ago because you need to put 5 Scooby snacks in each bag.
That's a lot.
That would not really work so well, right?
Yeah.
But with assistance, you and Angela have come, and we got myself and another member of the church, Cynthia, who's helped out, and Beth has helped out a little bit, and with assistance, they get it done, right?
It's so nice.
50 food bags. It takes like a half an hour.
Right. I know. I really like for them to have a volunteer opportunity, and that's one thing with dementia too. When they are in these stages of dementia, I want to keep them as active as possible.
Yeah.
Because that's going to make them be as happy as they can in where they're at.
Right.
So, you know, I remember I looked for a while for volunteer opportunities because I thought it would be so nice. They love to help. You know, regardless of what that is. Sometimes, you know, hey, can you help me stick envelopes, cards in envelopes, you know, just different things along those lines. And sometimes I'll bring my daughter to work and they think that they're babysitting her.
Oh, that's so fun.
And, you know, it's so nice because I'm like, you know what? You guys are the best babysitters there is. Like, I trust them wholeheartedly with my kid because I always tell people, animals and kids with people that have dementia, that they could watch them all day.
They're
and
all over
that's what's been so hard, especially after COVID. You know, there used to be a lot of schools or daycares that would want to come into our community, but now it's not that popular. It's kind of hard to get people to come in, because they think COVID a lot of times, so that's tough.
Well, and some there's that fear of, I mean, every now and again I'm like, oof, is it going to be okay to show up there? Should I be wearing a mask? You know, and we don't get totally up in their face or anything like that, but you don't want to be the one that passes on
for sure
a disease or, you know, like a virus to a resident, of course, and or vice versa. But, you know, that may be part of that dynamic too. So
yeah, and I mean, it's really hard because now when someone gets COVID, you know, we practice CDC guidelines, but you know, you quarantine them in their room, which try to picture quarantining somebody that has a 10-second memory in their room. Right. It gets pretty entertaining, you know, because all you're doing is just constantly trying to come up with things for them to do in their room because they're trying to contaminate everybody else. But, you know, what is so great is that we are all vaccinated, like all of our residents. So a lot of times if we do have COVID outbreak, it's not deadly like
it's not like it had been. And that's the other thing too, like we're learning more about this virus and how it can be, you know, managed and dealt with immediately, and it seems to keep changing, and so doesn't it feel like a different lifetime? Those early days of COVID feel really like so long ago. And it was very scary, so
for sure.
Yeah, y'all did a great job getting through it, for sure. And
it was tough.
You hung in there.
Yes.
Like, right? Because it was also very tough to be working in that situation. And
it was really sad. Definitely a sad time, to be able to, you know, see the residents that passed in the beginning. But I think that now it's kind of made us prepared. So if we do have anybody that has COVID, you know, we know exactly what to do. We know what we should be wearing. You know, we have a little isolation cart, so we figured it out.
Kind of know what to look for too, like what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so could you just share with our listeners what are you most passionate about in your either in your work or in your personal life that really fills your soul?
Fills my soul. Most passionate about. I think really I love to bring joy to other people. I think that that's what I love to do in my work life, in my personal life. You know, I want everybody to be happy. I find myself being the Energizer Bunny quite often because I really enjoy it, and I think that that's also why I got into this field. You know, I think these residents need somebody that's going to push them to, you know, come do things, and they're not going to do it if you're not just being obnoxious, honestly. You know, if I go to their room and I'm like, hey, we're down here hanging out, would you want to come? They're not going to come. You know, so just a social butterfly in one aspect, but I think one of my biggest passions is just trying to bring joy to other people and make them happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, despite the challenges, when we visit, it does always feel like a very positive, joyful environment, and I know we're not always seeing all the residents when we're there. You've shared that, you have a grand diversity of folks that live with you.
Yeah.
And so for us to bring our little Presbyterian form of worship and communion doesn't always fly with some folks, and
no, they love it. They love it.
Sometimes I wonder if, some of them know, I really am the preacher. I try to look respectful, but I'm sure I don't fit sort of their model of what they might have experienced. Especially, we've had some friends over the years who still will come, and they're very respectful, but they're like, I'm Catholic. And I'm like, okay. What we do and what I do is no.
Yeah.
And then it's always fun when we do our hymn sing. We usually bring our musician with us. One of our musicians comes. It's always fun. The repertoire of hymnody is very different between Presbyterian Church USA and Southern Baptist or Church of Christ. And so you have a grand diversity. You have residents that have been there who are Jewish and are participating, but maybe don't want to receive communion. And so you take everybody, don't you?
We do. We really do. We have such a diverse population, that's for sure.
Do you ever have residents
all the time, every day.
With
every
each other?
day.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah.
So we have
cliques. You have any little cliques?
You do have cliques. And as short as their memory is, they know, okay, I do not like you, I like you. Which is just, I always tell people, it's like having a bunch of brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
You're in close quarters with everybody.
The time,
they have their own rooms, but
right.
still, you're seeing these people for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So people get annoyed. So when at meal times, they kind of have assigned seats, that's because of their preference. But, we have to kind of gauge, okay, they got in a big argument today, so I think that they should probably separate. And, it's just, they think that they have assigned seats in the art activity room, too.
Oh, they always are in the same chair. Yeah.
Yes, they are. They have
it's
a
like
routine.
There are a bunch of Presbyterians coming to worship. They're always in the same spot.
With dementia, routine.
Yes,
that
exactly.
is very important to them. But yeah, there are definitely cliques. Some of them even pick and choose staff members, which is kind of funny. I like when so-and-so gives me a shower, but not so-and-so. In the past, I've even had a man that... for the longest time, I couldn't figure out why he wouldn't shower. We're trying to get him. That's one of the hardest parts for people with dementia. Hygiene in general. So finally, I realized it was blonde women.
Oh, he wanted blonde women, or he didn't want blonde women?
He wanted the blonde women to help him shower.
Yes.
And, it was just, he was more comfortable. So, sometimes it's genders, sometimes it's hair colors. It's all of the above on why we pick and choose. And it sometimes doesn't make sense, but...
And with my dad, it was what is the, almost even what is the energy that one? And the cute little ones, he'd love for them to get him in the shower, right? Because that doesn't go away. Their little sexual drive does not go away as they age and get dementia. I'm sure she's getting red. I'm sure there's some fun stories about that. And again, they don't remember, right?
No,
so
they do
know.
not.
And
they do not.
We did keep my dad at home. It was incredibly difficult, but he did not really live very long by himself at home. So, and we were around him. My sisters live right next door. And then I was there. That was my sabbatical. I was taking care of my dad. Not only, but, but man.
It's hard.
There are some fun stories about aging and sexuality. So that's a different podcast.
For sure.
Anyway. But yeah, so people don't remember where their rooms are all the time. But how many residents do you have?
So right now I have 21 residents.
Okay.
So,
which is a good number of people.
Yeah, so we are all the way full in my area. So sometimes the numbers kind of fluctuate because we have rooms that can share a restroom, but sometimes people buy out the whole suite. So the number kind of fluctuates depending on if people buy it differently. But our other memory care, I think it has 32 beds for late stages, so it's a little bit bigger. But that's really what I love about our area is it is one hallway. We have, around 20 residents, and so you get to know every single thing about these people. We are usually full just because it's early stages of dementia. Not many people separate this.
Right.
One of the other questions people ask is, well, you just move them when they get to late stages? So the answer is yes, and a lot of times they don't even realize that they've been moved.
Right.
It's not like we present to them that what's happening. We set their room up very similar, and they move right next door. Which is very sad. I still work over there, but a lot of my residents are in our building next door now.
Right. I'm sure if I went there, I would recognize many of them, because I don't even know how long we've been coming once a month. A couple of years now. Maybe since it was safe to come back since COVID, we've been coming every month, and now residents coming to us. So I see some of them more than I see some of our membership sometimes.
Yeah.
And but anyway, I'm sure it's like difficult to like see them transitioning as well. And are their loved ones a part of that decision, or is that like a part of it, like as the professionals, as those caring for, we sort of guide?
It's kind of the professionals to guide, but I will say, when our families move in, they realize what they're signing up for.
Okay.
So a lot of times, any sort of decline, they're calling me. Is it time to move? Is it time to move? So, we have guidelines in which it is time to go to our next building. There are tests that you can do, mental tests, to kind of see what stage you're in, and then just kind of like what they're doing with their bathroom, their showering, things like that, to kind of decide. But what's great about Brookdale is we have care plan meetings, so we do these quarterly. So we touch base. It's never a surprise.
Right,
a lot of the families even are like, I know what we're going to talk about today, because they're so up to date. But that's really what I love about our community too, is how involved our families are. I have friends that work in senior living, and they'll talk about, they don't know when some people even visit, but a lot of our residents have a lot of family involvement, which is so nice, and it's very helpful because, as staff members, a lot of times we name drop. Well, so-and-so said they're going to be here this evening, so we got to get changed. Like, we got to get ready for the day, So we love a name drop. And just preparing for them, is good for the residents. So
all you had to do was drop my niece's name, and my dad would do anything. In fact, like one of the last days we couldn't get him out of bed, but she was driving home from Missouri, and he was like, I'm like, what? Wait, I just walked out of the house for like an hour. How did you get him out of the bed, showered, and like dressed? Like, that would normally take like 3 hours. So yeah, things move slower when you have dementia and Alzheimer's as well.
For sure.
It's often.
Yes.
So, and just like as people like become residents, do they have to be in assisted living first, or they can sort of like start with
They can start.
Okay.
So a lot of people many times a lot of people are going to go ahead and wait as long as possible before they move into a senior living. So a lot of times, your memory cares are going to be more full than your assisted living. That's what we see anyway. But yeah, they can move in. Some people even just move straight into Clearbridge because they come from another facility, or they've had caregivers at home, which caregivers at home become hard. Snow days, what are we doing? So-and-so didn't show up. What are we doing? They can't be by themselves. So anyway, you can move in at any point. Right.
It's so hard. It's so hard to know, and I know with my dad there was like financial realities and accessibility, like, because being in a rural area, your people don't all just come from Nashville, do they? So
some of them even move here from out of state because their family's here in Nashville. So I mean, they come from all over, which kind of blows my mind too. Picture getting on an airplane with somebody that has dementia. I haven't done that, but I can't imagine.
You should take them all to the beach on the airplane.
You can come with us and help.
Long, fun.
No, they would.
I'll just sing on the plane.
Gosh.
We should probably charter our own plane to do that.
Right, I think so. No, they love going places, and that's what they start to see me as too. They're like, where's that girl that
you're
drives?
the fun person.
Yeah.
Oh, you're the driver.
Yeah.
Where's that girl that's getting me out of here?
Yeah, exactly. That's what they see me as, which is fine, because a lot of times when I have like a resident that's being very difficult, with any sort of care needs, you know, I'm the fun girl. So if the fun girl comes and talks to me about it, then I might do it for the fun girl. So that's also part of my gig, is trying to help my staff kind of understand dementia, try to figure out why they're doing the things that they're doing. Because, you know, a lot of times what everybody talks about with dementia is, you know, they're not doing their behaviors just to be rotten.
Right.
They're doing their behaviors because of something going on.
Right. Inside.
So, yes. So what is that? You know, are they not showering because they don't like the way the water feels when it hits their skin?
Right.
Are they not showering because you're a male and they're a woman and they don't like that? You know, so trying to figure out what that is, because they're not able to voice that. So that's another part of my job that I find so satisfying. Like when we finally figure out what it is and then we run with it and we're able to figure out that solution, it just, my day's done. I'm good to go. That was so exciting.
It was a good day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. So when they move in, like the process would be anybody could like come and do a tour, or do they just like just come on in?
So you can do any senior living, you can do a walk-in tour, or you can schedule in advance.
Okay.
So some people walk in and they're like, I was in the area, can I get a tour? And most senior living should have somebody there available for you to tour.
Okay.
Or you can schedule in advance. And
probably smarter to schedule in advance, especially if you want to talk to Paige, because you won't find her otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I do think advance is
you're
nice.
always on the floor somewhere, but
right, yeah. But yeah, scheduling in advance is great. That way you can get all the information.
Like
all
the right people will
from
be there.
The sales director. You can get all the packets. They can talk money. That's kind of a big deal. So anybody can come.
Yeah.
We even do Zoom tours. Some people want to do it from out of state. Like my mom lives in Nashville. I don't. She wants to live in Nashville. So can I get a tour? So we have videos that we can send them of the rooms, you know, different things like that.
Yeah, cool. Now, I know I just was in a conversation last night with my family members about this. I know that there are places where like you buy in and then like you have care until the end. How does the money work? Not to get all into business, but
when it
is a reality, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. So when you're in a senior living, if you move into like an assisted living or an independent living, you are paying your room rate, and then you're going to be added on for everything else you need. So if you need somebody to do your medications, you would have to pay for that. If you need somebody to help do your standby showers, you'd have to pay for that. Whereas if you move into a memory care, majority of the time it's going to be all inclusive. So it's going to be your room rate, it's going to be medication, it's going to be standby assistance, it's going to be escorting to meals. You're getting all of that. The only what they call carve-outs is going to be if you have to have 2 people to lift you. Or you have to be fed. That right there is, you're going to be needing more staff.
Yeah, you're going to need like double the staff.
Yes. So like in a senior living, basically each resident, when they move in, you come up with a care profile that's going to say, here's all the things that they need, and this is going to give you the amount of hours that you need for staffing. So that's kind of like just the logistics behind it, is you're going to need more staff if you have someone you have to actually feed, and the other people are, you know, they have to be cared for too.
Right. If you have 10 of your 20 residents have to be fed,
that's
and
tough.
Everything else, you're going to need more hands.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
How many hands do you normally have there? How many staff members are normally at
So
the
it kind of depends. So the
Okay.
crossings is a little bit different because our thought is everybody in our crossings needs minimal prompts.
Okay.
So we don't necessarily, because they're in early stages, so we don't necessarily need to physically get you dressed, but we could lay out your outfit and you could do it yourself.
Yeah.
You know, we don't need to physically help in the shower. We just need to get your shower turned on. We need to get your stuff laid out, and you do it. So during the day...
Maybe remind you to get out of the shower.
Correct.
My dad would spend hours in the shower. I'm like, hasn't the water gotten cold?
Or my favorite is a run-through shower. You know, just a tap and out. That's the next one.
That sounds like teenage boys.
Yes. So we have a nurse 24/7.
Okay.
So they do 12-hour shifts, and then our staff do 12-hour shifts too. So during the day, we have 2 caregivers for our 20 residents, and then we have a programmer there that's also present. But however, in our late stages of dementia, you're going to have more staff members because it's more care.
Right.
My residents are usually still able to toilet themselves. I don't know. Is this what you talk about on podcasts?
These are realities.
But, you know, they
And I
are.
think it's helpful for our listeners to know, like, all of these details, because so many people are afraid. They don't want to go to any kind of, nobody ever wants to leave their home, right?
Right.
And then it's like, well, what do you do, right?
Right.
And so to kind of break down some of those barriers too, like, it's not like it's awful.
No, it's not.
Fun. It's joyful. It's a bright, sunny room that we're in all the time. So it's a beautiful location.
Yeah,
So,
it is.
Anyway, so go on.
Anyway, if, you know, my people are able to toilet themselves, so that also takes away, like, you don't need a whole lot of staff for that.
Right.
Whereas in our Clare Bridge later stages of dementia, they have to be physically probably taken to the bathroom and maybe physically changed.
Right, right.
So that's just kind of our thought process on how we are staffed in our crossings program.
Are there like state regulations you have to follow? We have a preschool here, and there's a lot of them. So
Oh, yeah.
Are
There
there
are a lot
things
of
like
state-
adult, like ratio kind of things, or not like that?
Yeah. So we, you will have an annual state visit.
Okay.
But then also, you know, if somebody has any concerns, like families can also call state and they can have them come check different things too. So there are a lot of requirements that you have to have for state guidelines.
Didn't you
on
tell me
every-
once you can't have any like space heaters or things
Yeah.
like that? And they are always freezing. That's the one thing I hear about all the time. It's so cold in here. A couple weeks ago, it was like 98 degrees outside. I was trying to be respectful in what I was wearing, and my spot was right in front of the fireplace, which was blazing, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, the fireplace stays on at all times.
Yeah.
They are always cold.
They're always cold.
Their rooms, they would love it to be set at 80 degrees. I mean,
Yeah.
but I mean, I have someone as old as 103. Her birthday was
Oh, wow.
Wednesday. Her birthday was
Oh,
Wednesday.
wow, cool.
But anyway, you know, the older you get, the warmer you need it. But yeah, so you can't have space heaters, and then also like surge protectors. They're pretty strict about those. So each department in a senior living, you have certain regulations.
Okay.
So like me with programming, I have to keep up with my attendance for all my activities. I have to keep up with like my resident councils. So like there's different requirements for every part. Nursing, they have like pages and pages.
Lots and lots.
Maintenance,
probably.
they have pages
Yeah.
and pages
Oh, wow,
of
yeah.
state regulations that they have to have.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. Well, because the worst thing is that, you know, something doesn't happen that should, and then there's a fire or whatever. How do you get folks? Do you have to have fire drills and things? Or
Yeah, we have fire drills.
Like, how do you get
that's
folks
another
who have
part of
dementia
state regulation. So we have to have elopement drills too.
Okay.
So basically, which God forbid this happens, but we do have alarm systems. But if a resident were to leave the facility,
Okay.
you know, this does happen, unfortunately. You know, they might sneak on an elevator.
I don't know how, because I can't even get myself out of the place.
So
Like, I can't
what's
get in
so
and I can't get
hard
out. So
with early stages of dementia is a lot of people don't realize that they're a resident. You know, I've had people as young as 53.
Yeah,
that
you
have
have some
moved
young
in.
folks.
So
Oh,
like,
gosh, that's my
you know,
age.
you're not gonna glance at a resident and be like, oh yeah, you for sure live here. You know, so if they say, hey, my car's in the parking lot, I gotta run down, I got a doctor's appointment.
Right.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So if you don't know all the residents, it's kind of easy. But you have to do fire drills, you have to do elopement drills, tornado drills. All of these are very common.
Yeah.
You know, a washer, or we had a dryer kind of catch on fire. This was like a while ago, and it wasn't anything serious, but you know, we had to evacuate all of them.
Oh,
so
my gosh.
evacuating is tough. Evacuating people with dementia from the 3rd floor.
Yes, because you're not just walk right out, which is a good thing. You're not just walk right
Correct.
out.
Correct. But anyway, yeah, that one's tough. That one's tough. But
So do all of you fit on the elevator at the same time?
so you can't use the elevator in a fire drill.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even think. Oh, they have to go down steps.
3 flights of stairs.
Oh wow, that's very hard.
Mm-hmm.
How often do you have these drills?
They do them for each shift, so I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
That's not my gig. But
That's all right.
But what's really the thought process in a fire drill is if you get them in the stairwell and you close the door, those walls, I think they like hold back the fire for like a couple hours.
Okay.
So if you have people in wheelchairs, the thought is you get everybody downstairs. The fire department will be there to help you carry down the people in wheelchairs.
Okay. Wow. Man, that's a nightmare in and of itself. We have no idea what goes into. We just have fun with.
But also, fire alarms. They went off yesterday. They were like testing them. That makes all of the residents so mad.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because they're so loud.
Yeah.
They can't think. So then I know Angela called me and she's like, the fire alarms are going off. I've given everybody moon pies. Because it was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? They're just yelling at us because they're so mad about the loud noise.
Right.
So
that's so funny.
Makes it weird.
That is one thing you've taught me. Because, like, again, speaking about my dad, but like, never was a man to eat sweets. I mean, now and again. But then, I mean, like, every morning he had to have his M&Ms, and all he would eat is cookies. It was all sweets. And why is that, Paige?
Well, the sweet taste is the last to go.
No idea. I had no idea.
So we have sugar canisters on the tables, and our residents sprinkle sugar all over their food.
Everything. Wow.
But they eat it.
Uh-huh. That's good.
But yeah, so they love sugar. And, they say that in the beginning, sugar is not good for you, and it sometimes can help like dementia develop or whatever. So, however, my thought process is they already have dementia. This is what they want to eat.
Uh-huh.
So unless they're a diabetic, it's not hurting anybody.
Well, and it's what they can taste, because like you're saying, it's like the last taste bud that still is like
but
alive,
also,
active, whatever. And so
kind of what I was talking about before with the retrogenesis guide, they don't like vegetables, which is, think about a toddler. It's the exact same. They don't. Some of them, if you give them a plate and it has greens on, I literally have to go to the side and like scrape it off and then hand them the plate back because the whole plate was contaminated because you had green beans on there.
Greens.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm sure food is an issue because also like you all eat right there. There's a dining room right there across from the activities room. Everybody who lives on that floor all eats together.
Correct.
So, like, the food is all prepared somewhere in the facility, and do they all eat the same thing every day?
They don't eat the same thing every day.
I mean, not every day, but does everybody get the same thing?
So, no, we have two options.
Okay.
And also we have, like, someone that's a vegetarian, so they get different food.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll have people that are diabetic, so they might get a little bit different, but
usually they have two options, and then we have sandwiches available all the time.
Okay.
Because sometimes, I could look at them and I'll say, would you like spaghetti or would you like baked chicken? And they might pick this spaghetti, but then I bring it to them and they hate it, so I have a chicken salad sandwich I can bring them.
Oh, that's nice.
So they have options, and yeah, food is tough. Food is tough. You are trying to work with everybody that comes from all different types of backgrounds, and of course, many of them...
ethnicities, tastes, whatever, preferences.
And many of them were cooks, too.
Yeah.
So sometimes we get kind of judgmental about different things, but they do the same thing at restaurants.
You don't make it the way I make it.
Exactly.
But they love going to restaurants, don't they?
They do.
It's one of their...
They do.
And ice cream. They love going out for ice cream.
Love ice cream.
And the Hill Pantry Annex. That's their favorite.
That is.
We try to make it fun
No,
for
they
them.
love it. They really do.
We bring the folks over here to do work. That's what we do. They're volunteering, though, and using their skills and abilities still. But yeah, we put them to work when they get here.
They love it.
And then we feed them.
Yes. Give us ice cream and cookies and lemonade. It was perfect.
Exactly. Yeah, they love that.
Yeah,
so
they do.
It's super fun. Yeah. So, is there anything we haven't covered yet you want to make sure I ask you?
I don't think so.
Well, okay. Well, I have some standard closing questions.
Okay.
All right. First one is, do you have a mantra that you live by? Or any kind of little phrase that you remember to like keep you through the day?
Well, this might be a little bit different. I was thinking more of a quote, but when I was younger, my aunt, she put above my bed this quote, and it said, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." That was Gandhi.
Oh, yeah.
I really like that quote. I think that that's amazing. I think that if every single person in the world pitched in their, special traits and did something that they thought would better the world, makes the world a better place.
It would be the changed world, wouldn't it?
For sure.
I have a little book on that. It's
really?
super fun. Yeah, it's called Be the Change You Want to See in the World.
I love that quote.
It's great. Cool. All right. And do you have it like above your bed now?
I do not have it above my bed right now.
Painted above your bed?
No, but I just like the quote.
Yeah. Well, and it was above your bed, so you remember it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. That is awesome because it would be helpful to remember to try to teach to people what we want them to remember throughout life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is why I'm fussy about hymns.
Yeah.
Because I want them to have like good images of God and like, you know, themes in their hymns that are going to stay in their brain forever,
right.
that are actually uplifting and helpful as they transition, right?
Yeah.
So I'm very picky about hymns.
That's fine.
Because what I know as a preacher is that what I say, I mean, we learn in homiletics like how to help things form in consciousness. It's part of what we learn. There's a way you can do that, and rhetoric you use and whatever. But I also know at the end of the day, when they sing something, that's what's going to stay with them.
Oh yeah.
Because I mean, there's multiple places in the brain that are working when you sing, as opposed to just hearing a preacher, you know, speak, if you will. So I'm very picky about it. I try to be loose about it because everybody wants to sing, you know, what they enjoy singing too. So, but if there are mantras or things that we want, like our young people, anybody to know, let's teach them now, right? Because it'll stay with them. Like, be not afraid is all over the Bible.
Oh yeah.
Not a bad phrase to make sure people know as they age, right? And let that stick with them. So, anyway, okay, cool. All right, so do you have, I'm going to ask this as a two-part question, resources, books, podcasts, support groups that would be helpful for our listeners to know about, any kind of resources related to dementia and Alzheimer's?
So Alzheimer's of Tennessee, their page has a lot of resources. Also Teepa Snow.
Okay, say that again.
Teepa Snow.
Okay.
Teepa Snow.
Okay.
That's her name.
Person.
Yes. Okay. On YouTube, she will literally be like, has every circumstance in which you might need when you're caring for somebody with dementia. She has videos. She has all sorts of training guides. So she's amazing. And then, of course, my support group is really great. We meet the fourth Tuesday of every month at Brookdale Belle Meade at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
But also, if that's too far away from you, on Alzheimer's of Tennessee page, in one of their drop-down boxes, they have a support group page that separates them by county.
Okay.
So we are with Alzheimer's of Tennessee.
Okay.
And so we are on their page, but you can see other support groups in your area. I always recommend that to people too. It's just nice to be surrounded by other people that are going through the same thing you're going through.
It does help keep you from kind of losing your own mind.
Oh, for sure.
And I remember too in our process, like because this was a situation, my mom was passing first and had to be admitted to hospice care, resident hospice care.
Yeah.
But she chose the hospice she did in our county so that loved ones could go with her. But my dad had Alzheimer's. And I would have been with her anyway, but I literally had to go, and I had to block the door because he never understood. He thought we were at a hotel. The next morning he'd be like, is this the day we're taking her home? You know, there was so much, and like they were like, he cannot wander. Like you,
oh my gosh.
It was very unsettling for him.
Yeah.
He did get to go home and shower and whatnot. We didn't try to put him through doing that there at the hospice room, but I had to sleep on a cot in front of the door and be able to let the nurses in and keep him out and be like, no, Dad, that room, like, because there were multiple doors in the room. It was a very nice suite, wonderful Sharon Richardson Hospice in Sheboygan County. It was amazing, like one of the best residents I've ever experienced. So it was a huge room, and so there was a door for the closet, a door for the bathroom, and a door to exit. And it was like, Dad, choose that door. And then he would be in there, and I'd be like, is he ever coming out? So it's just like very disorienting. Yeah. So having that support was really helpful. I would call sisters that weren't there and be like, ah!
Oh, yeah. And, you know, that's what our support group is. You know, sometimes it's, oh, my gosh, guess what my mom did this week? Or sometimes it's, can you guys all cry with me because this disease is so disgusting?
Yeah.
You know, so it's really tough, but I think that it's nice to be around people that are going through it too, because if you were to talk to somebody that has never had a loved one go through dementia, they'd be like, what do you mean that they're screaming at you? What do you mean they're trying to hit you?
Right.
Like, that's your mom, you know?
What do you mean that you have to help them, like, turn the shower on? Or like, that you can't be like, go get dressed, or that you even have to say like, go get dressed, right? And then you walk in and the underwear's over the head or whatever, you know,
exactly.
What are you talking about? Yeah, there's like ways that we have and how we care for people and still love and try to give as much dignity and respect. And you know, this could be any one of us, right?
Oh,
so,
for sure.
You know, we would want the same for us, but it also is kind of funny when you walk in.
Oh, yeah. You have to laugh. You have to laugh so you don't cry. I always tell people, I'm like, you got to find joy in the little moments and then just cry when you get home. Because, I mean, it's tough. It's tough to take care of somebody like that, and it's really sad to see the progression, especially if it's, you know, something that is so tough, I think, for people that are taking care of their parents. You know, they are now seeing they're the parental figure,
right?
And so, you know, you're telling your mom what she should be doing, and she's like, "I raised you. What do you mean you're telling me to do this?" So that's always a tough relationship. You know, I also have husband and wives, and I think sometimes that's a little bit easier. Not that anything with it is easy, but I think that they take direction from their spouse a little bit better.
Maybe they didn't in their relationship.
Right.
And then they don't at the end either.
Yes.
So,
but, you know, I think that they have a little more trust rather than the kid. It's like, I'm the boss, you're not the boss, quit bossing me around.
I have seen that for sure. Not only in my own life, but then also in the lives of others. Yeah. And it's so hard because the parent does need the care, and yet it is a major reversal of roles. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's really challenging. So, and some people aren't willing to do it. Mm-hmm. Like, they aren't willing to receive care from their, you know, children, or the children aren't willing to care for. Yeah. It's hard. It's hard. The whole aging process is. But I think it's beautiful. I think there's like nothing more holy than journeying with somebody to and through the end. Like, it's just so amazing.
You know, I do find a lot of, I hate to say joy in the same sentence I'm about to use hospice, but, you know, to be able to take care of somebody when they're in their last chapter of their life, I think that it brings a lot of joy to me that I was able to, take off a lot of work for the family. You know, they are now able to be family members instead of caregivers. Because a lot of times when you get in that caregiver role, you don't really have that relationship that you want to. You know, you want to be able to hug and kiss them and tell them it's going to be okay, but really you're toileting them and showering them and you're exhausted and you're stressed, and sometimes that goes to your type of care that you're giving. So, you know, I think that a lot of joy comes from, you know, when somebody passes, knowing that I was there the whole time. Mm-hmm. You know, I really developed a relationship with them. It is so hard and it is very devastating, you know, and every room I could tell you the people that lived there before, just because, you know, then you have to get another resident in, which is part of senior living. Yeah. It's very sad. But just to watch somebody pass away, you know, it's tough, but it's also, there is a lot of, I don't know, what word am I looking for here?
It's rewarding.
It is.
In some ways.
It is rewarding. But the families are usually just so grateful for everything too, which is so sweet. But
right, yeah. Hopefully they're being patient and kind as well.
Yes.
In the process, yeah. I feel like it's a really holy process, and you have given birth, right? Uh-huh. So you know, like when we come in, it's a very holy thing, right? Mm-hmm. And when we go out, it's a very holy thing. For me, being with people in the dying process, and I've been with people, you know, not only my own personal loved ones, but I mean, as a pastor, it's part of your gig, if you will. And so I've been the person sometimes that the person tells their diagnosis to first before they even tell their children. They tell it to me before they tell anybody else in the community. That can be a really hard thing to bear, but at the same time, it's like, wow, like to just have that honor, to be able to be trusted like that, and to be that connection, if you will, with the divine, the holy, with God. And so it's really kind of cool. And in my experience, being with people in the dying process, really, it makes me grateful for every moment. Mm-hmm. And it reminds me, like, live your life, because it's not going to last forever. I'm not going to be forever. And it's not something to be afraid of. Like, my ministry started, my internship in the hospital was on oncology hospice. Mm-hmm. So I was with a lot of people in that process. Yeah. Not always there all the way at the end, but what I saw was just this way that people kind of wrap it all up in some ways. And for the most part, I've seen people come to peace as they pass, and sometimes you see kind of mystical, magical things if you're there, or like, you know, see people who are, quote, hallucinating. And I've seen people, I'm like, I know they're seeing somebody, and they're having a very lucid conversation with that person, but to us, it looks like they're hallucinating. This is crazy talk or whatever. It's like, no, like the veil is so thin. So it's just like this really cool way. It feeds my spirit as well and helps me understand it all.
Yeah, something more. You know, we always try to describe in the process when we get to a point where we realize we're not going to have much longer is, you know, making sure that they have all that they need to let go. So, you know, I had a lady and her family was FaceTiming everybody. They're calling everybody. They're like, I don't know why she's not letting go. You know, I even got to a point where I was like, her purse was her best friend. Can we put it in her bed? You know, we're trying to come up with everything as to what it can be. But yeah, I think it's definitely rewarding, but hard process.
But it's hard. Yeah. So I had a story recently from a friend who was doing hospice social work and then hospice chaplaincy, and there was a resident, again, you know, it was at home hospice, wouldn't let go. Finally figured out, like, oh, she's Catholic. I hope it's okay I'm telling this story. She's Catholic. And so she was a person who was very open to all religions and expressions of spirituality, and she brought the rosary. And they prayed the rosary together, and the woman passed later that night. So it's like, yes, finding like what is kind of keeping, and we switched into hospice anyway, because it's all part of life. I've been with family members who are like, I have to be there when they die. You know, like I have to be there that moment. And it's like the moment they walk out the room, the loved one finally passes. And I've sort of come to like the dynamics between the loved ones sometimes is part of what, like mamas who are so intent on being mama to their children sometimes won't go because they don't, that's a way they're still mothering their children. Or others who like the family has been so important, and it's like I need my family here as I pass on. So anyway, we could like do a whole nother podcast on this, I'm sure. But okay, it's time to close up. So I want to ask, what parting words of wisdom or encouragement do you have to share with our listeners?
Does this need to be like dementia or
whatever you want? Whatever you want. You can do both or whatever.
Parting words of wisdom. I think that something that comes up a lot of times in our support group is they felt like they waited too late to move in their loved ones. You know, nobody wants to pull that trigger. And sometimes if you wait too late, then you're not even going to get the facility you want because they're, you know. So I'd say take a tour. If you have any questions, if you feel like you're getting to that point, take a tour. But also I think have the conversations early. There is a resource and it's called, I think it's 3 Wishes. And it's kind of a document that people use, and it goes through, you know, if I got this diagnosis, what would I want you to do with me? And it's not necessarily, you know, a lot of wills that you do, it's for death. It's not for any sort of change of condition, if that's cancer, if that's dementia. So have those conversations.
Or a stroke, or a heart attack, or whatever, have those conversations early of what you'd want your loved ones to do, I think is very, very important. You know, because your family's going to be the ones that are making those decisions, and they're the ones that are going to be feeling guilty. And, you know, something me and my aunt talk about a lot is we felt so guilty when we moved my grandpa, but we know that's what he wanted. Like, he told us that, so that made us feel a little bit better. So I think just making sure that your family is aware of, okay, here's what we should do if this were to happen. And it's so hard, I know for myself, like the timing of when, and I've had folks with dementia and they don't realize they're dying, and so that becomes very complicated too, like how do you minister to them in the middle of that? Because it's like, do you realize that you're like towards the end or not, and they may not, but like, I think having the conversations being open, finding a way to be able to have like the conversation even about like how do you want your dying process to be? Like, do you want to be at home in a facility, who do you want around you? You know, when we asked my mom, like I asked my mom, like, what do you want to take with you? When like they're coming to get her to take her to hospice, like how surreal is that? And it's like, what should we pack for you, Mom? Like for your last part of this journey. So bizarre and so amazing, you know, but to not be afraid to have that conversation.
Yeah, and you know, we actually lost my father-in-law a couple years ago, and we had all the information. Mm-hmm. He died of cancer, so we knew exactly what he wanted, and we were all able to be there. And I think that a lot of the decisions, like for my mother-in-law, I think it wasn't very, I mean, of course, everything with this is going to be difficult, but I think because they had that conversation earlier, they knew what he wanted, they knew he was going to be at home with us, you know, they had everything set. They even planned his funeral before he passed. So we were able to have this poem that he wanted at the funeral. Right. You know, so I think just pre-planning is always very important, because in a time of need, so if you were to wait till after they passed,
right, you have no idea.
You have no idea, and now you're not able to ask them the questions that you wanted to ask them. So with dementia, you're not able to ask them the questions. They might not have the same answer. You know, same with somebody that's dying from cancer. You know, they might not be able to give you all the answers. They might be on too much morphine, you know, different things along.
Or like they might be, I have a spiritual director who told me once, you know, like the veil is so thin, they're here and they're there, if you will, and whoever is coming to talk to them, sure, they probably will say X to them. And then the next person comes and they say why. Because it's almost like, it's not like they're lying. It's not like the other person is lying to you. We definitely have this dynamic happen. Right. But it's like, you know, either the mind is changing, or, you know, people are hearing different things, or the person really is saying a different thing based on who it is before them, and kind of what their needs or wants are based on that relationship. So, and I know the other thing, just to throw my word of encouragement in here, my dad was able to agree to hospice care because he had cancer as well. So, but then he didn't remember that he had agreed to it. So that made it really hard too. So another encouragement to loved ones. In some ways it's so hard, but like you cannot take it personally. Right. And there was ranting and railing and whatever, but it's like, you know, this is and then also we had to like let him have his process, right? He was going to do it the way he was going to do it, even with the dementia and Alzheimer's. We knew he was safe. Right. So, you know, it's hard. But then the other fun thing we did, this is another like how to pre-plan, right? This is me, and I'm crazy, and I've always been like open to death in the process or whatever, but I really am intrigued by natural burial. And so where you like just are buried in the earth, if you will. If you don't know about this, Larkspur is close. It's probably not that far from you. It's a way that a loved one can be naturally buried, returned to the earth, without like embalming, without cremation, without any of those things, and funeral homes don't even have to be involved. So I'm a big proponent in like, if you don't want the whole like be in the casket and everybody pass by and look at mama and say, doesn't she look beautiful? And it's like, no, she looks like a dead person. You know, like no amount of makeup is gonna change that. No wig they put on. You know, anyway, some people need that, but if you don't and you don't want all that hoopla, then don't call the funeral home. Right. You're like, this is economical, right? Like it's so much cheaper for direct cremation. Well, natural burial is a way to literally just like be put in a shroud, if you will, in a natural basket, and your loved ones can be a part of like digging the hole, this whole thing. Oh, wow. And it's usually at places where there's land conservation going on. So I found out about a place not that far from home, and I was like, okay, I'm coming home in July, and this was about a year before both of my parents passed, and I'm like, I've scheduled us a tour, and we had so much fun. We have pictures from it. We giggled, we laughed, we were on this four-wheeler ATV thing, going around and learning about like natural burial. But it opened all of these conversations. And my mom was already, you know, had cancer for many years at that point. But it finally like opened these conversations. So everybody should go and have a little tour of a natural burial with your loved ones.
Oh, wow.
It's so much fun. And from that, went home and literally had the conversations about like, well, what do you want? So much so, and some of this is personality, that my mom had an entire list. I mean, including like how many jars of pickles we had to have at the little celebration of life reception that we had to have after. And she was cremated because it wasn't going to be feasible for natural burial, and wanted to be cremated in the remains on our land, our family land. And so she had a list of not only where her ashes had to be placed, but also some of them were like at what time of day.
Oh, wow.
So imagine this. My dad is grieving like about 10 days after her death. We have to release some of her ashes at our beach at sunrise and try to get him out of the bed to get him ready. I'm like, Dad, come on.
She gave us a time.
The sun is rising. You are making, because he was so slow at that point. Imagine getting somebody with Alzheimer's out the door after they've just lost their beloved love of their life.
I can't. Oh my gosh.
Release the ashes. And we just but now we giggle about it. And, she had the little sandwiches. I mean, pre-planning is a good thing.
Yeah, no questions. You had no questions about what she wanted.
Plenty of pickles. We had no problem with. It bothered her that she was always part of helping with the funerals at her church, and it bothered her that they always only would allow 1 jar of pickles.
Stop it.
And everybody loved the pickles, and they always ran out. And she's like, "We must have 3 jars of pickles."
I bet she is happy.
She was like, yeah, she's happy. We did it. We did exactly what she told us to do.
That's so sweet.
Anyway, so yeah, pre-planning. Any other words of encouragement or wisdom to share?
I don't think so.
Go to the beach. Right?
Take your vacation.
Take your vacation.
Even if you're a caregiver at home, figure out a way. Take your vacation.
Yeah, like don't let the guilt of you having a loved one at a facility or even your primary care, like don't let the guilt of that, because caregiving is tough.
Mm-hmm. It is.
I do recall I was so sore, so tired, so exhausting. It's very tough.
Mm-hmm.
And you do get to see and do gross things.
Oh, yes. Yes.
It's all a part, just like when you had your baby. You got to see and do gross things.
Exactly.
So, or if you have a dog, same thing, right?
Yes.
Anyway, all right. Well, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
See, I knew we wouldn't just go for 20 minutes.
We didn't go for just 20 minutes.
We did not. And we appreciate it so much. And Paige Holbert, everybody, check out the crossings and the work of Brookdale Belle Meade.
Yes.
And look forward to seeing you.
Perfect.
Again
Thanks for having me.
And Conversations for Peace, folks. Have a beautiful rest of the day. Pre-plan and live your life. Bye.